Hi guys, my name is Ingrid. As you can see, I'm speaking here directly from the ILO. I would like to talk to you about collective bargaining in Denmark, France, and the Netherlands. During the presentation, I will point out similarities and differences in the main collective bargaining features of these three countries. More precisely, I will be discussing the presentation. First, the regulation by law in these countries. Second, the collective bargaining coverage. Third, levels of collective bargaining in their relationships. And fourth, the influence of external actors. First, let's talk about the regulation by law in France, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Regarding the ILO conventions, all three countries have ratified the Convention number 87 on freedom of association and number 98 on collective bargaining. As for the constitutions, the constitution of the three countries mention freedom of association. The difference is that in Denmark and the Netherlands, the freedom of association comes within the provisions, and in France, it's in the preamble. With respect to non-constitutional national laws, no country has a single act regulating freedom of association. However, it should be noted that France and the Netherlands have provisioned their laws addressing freedom of association. In Denmark, it's not regulated by any law whatsoever. What occurs in Denmark is that framework agreements established between employees and employers' representatives regulate the collective bargaining. So it's not within any written legislation, but it comes within the collective agreements. Now we are going to talk about the second point, which is collective bargaining coverage and trade union membership. The three countries have main union confederations that no longer have a connection with a political party. As for the criteria of representativeness, Denmark and the Netherlands have no statutory regulation establishing a criteria of representativeness that must be met. However, France has a different approach to it. In France, a union needs to gain at least 10% of the votes at the company level to be considered representative at the company level. At the national and industry level, it is 80%. It should be noted that the three countries had a decline in the trade union membership. France only has 8% of the working population as a member of a trade union. The Netherlands have approximately 20% and Denmark 67% of employees affiliated to a trade union. Despite the low numbers in France and the Netherlands, 98% of the employees are covered by collective bargaining in France and 84% in the Netherlands. Denmark also has a high number of coverage, consisting on 80%. It should be noted that in all three countries there has been a decline in trade union membership. However, despite the low density of membership in the Netherlands and in France, the trade unions are still influential. Now we move to the third point, which is levels of collective agreement. I first would like to call your attention to the fact that the three countries have collective agreements on the national, industry, and company level. But it should be noted that Denmark collective agreements bargained between the main workers and employers organizations, which are called basic agreements, occupy the space that other countries reserve for the statutory law. For example, these basic agreements regulate the right to organize, rights on dismissal, formal rules on strikes and lockouts, rules on termination of a collective agreement, the peace obligation of a collective agreement, and industrial disputes. But these basic agreements are not as important in France and the Netherlands because they are regulated by statutory law. Related to industry and company agreements, in the three countries, these agreements cover a wide range of pay and conditions issues, including pensions, special benefits, health and safety, occupational training, and working hours. However, the difference is in terms of pay. These three countries have differences when they regulate pay through collective agreements. France and the Netherlands already have a minimum wage established in statutory law. However, in the Netherlands, collective agreements at the industry level can set salaries for the sector, and at the company level, it's not so common. In France, On the other hand, collective agreements in the industry level have a limited importance regarding salaries in comparison to the company level, which has more importance. Then you see that the Netherlands and France has a kind of opposite way to each other. In Denmark, there is no minimum wage settled by statutory law, but the absence is counterbalanced by the wide coverage of collective agreements and high union density. Now, we should mention the favorability principle, which is applicable in the three countries. But I would like to call your attention to the case of France, that since 2004, the legislative reform weakened this principle. The reform in France allowed company-level agreements to diverge from the industry agreements in areas where this is not specifically prohibited by the industry agreement, with the exception of a number of key issues, such as minimum pay rates, where divergence is prohibited. A trend can be found to decentralize collective bargaining by shifting the balance towards company agreements as a tool to achieve competitiveness and ensure wages are in line with productivity. Now, the fourth and last point is the influence of external actors. Let's first talk about the government of each of the countries. As an external actor. In Denmark, the government has a limited influence because the government is not involved in the agreements, and also due to the lack of legislation, the agreements are negotiated between the employers and the employees' representatives. In France, the government supervises and monitors the progress of the social partners by using the power to decide whether or not to extend collective agreements. In the Netherlands, the role of the government is similar to the role of the government in France. Since the government in the Netherlands can declare that a collective agreement is generally binding, thus making the collective agreement also applicable to the entire industry or sector. As for the influence of the EU as an external actor, France and the Netherlands already tend to regulate collective bargaining by law, but Denmark is forced by the EU to implement the relevant labor directives. But the Danish system of flexicurity does not perfectly fit to the implementation of common directives, which results in tensions and discussions. I hope you guys have enjoyed the tour through the ILO, and if you have any doubts, please ask the girls, and I hope it was clear enough. Thank you guys, see you.